Congratulations on it is quite remarkable that this is your seventh album. I mean, for goodness sake, it's like honestly, I mean, you look 12. So
Thank you, John. Yeah, man. Like my friend Shakana, remember Shakana?
yep,
She's
yep,
still doing her thing. I love that girl. I
yep,
remember meeting her at I think it was the writers camp, the BMI writers camp, where I
yep.
wrote a lot of the songs that ended up on In Tandem, and Music Exchange was going on at the same time. And we were all like involved in that, and we spoke at the conference, and we had the writing sessions during the day, and we didn't know each other, and it was, and she used to say to me, yeah, you know how when you make an album, you die a little every time.
Kind of, yeah, I remember that. I remember that
She's like
vividly.
wise beyond her years, that girl,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so talented. I mean, like I loved working with her, and I've kept in touch with her, and so, and it's true, it's so much, there's so much work involved, and it does get overwhelming sometimes, and you have to just truck on.
yeah.
That's
That's the nature of the industry that you signed up for. So here we are. As I say, yep, album 7, weirdly called Surrender, not oddly, ironically, call it what you will. Um, what are you surrendering to?
that is a good question. And that is exactly how it's meant. It is not meant as in a sense of giving up, but quite the opposite. It's letting go. So the idea is to surrender to. There are different themes on the record. As far as every song is different. Every
Very
song has
much.
a different theme,
Mm.
and but the surrendering involves the approach of of taking a step back and responding rather than reacting to something, right?
Yeah.
So it involves having more self-control, controlling your temper, yeah, relinquishing the idea that or relinquishing situations or people that want nothing but your help, and they are in need of it. And I am someone that loves to do that. I love to help. I love to help others, and but helping others for the right reasons, and that has been something that I've had to adjust for myself, where I've not let people near me that just want to. It's very one-sided,
Yeah.
and that can be relationship. It can be romantic. It can be in a professional sense. It happens on so many levels. So a lot of the thinking behind the song, the title song, Surrender, and the album reflects that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got 10 tracks on there that are probably, and you can correct me, it's probably a 4-year journey, probably longer for you in the songwriting and the creation of. But it when you started that journey with Surrender to where it's now been realized, and on the 3rd of March, obviously, that's when all will, excuse me, all will be revealed. Um, there was no way that you could have scripted how this album would come together, the people that you would work with, some people you've yet to meet, that made this album possible.
Yeah, I literally only just met the bass player on the record. Yeah, Max Sternlich, this guy, and a great talent, and but we couldn't work together, during the pandemic. We couldn't be in the same room. They told
Yeah,
us not to, and
yeah,
it's madness. It's madness. Let's face it. The whole thing. It's
yeah.
absolute madness.
Stupid.
But there's also the situation was so real and also so unknown. We didn't know how things were going to play out. And, you know, the pandemic played a huge role in the making of this record because my manager, may he rest in peace, Gary Salzman, died from COVID early on in the pandemic.
I remember.
Management, Gary Salzman, big management, who I had just signed with. I had signed with Gallo in South Africa to release In Tandem, my last album.
Yeah.
Which I made in South Africa at the Academy of Sound Engineering, which I'm going to be back at. I just talked to Nick Mitsoukas over there, and I'm going to be back there on the 14th to do a workshop and a performance at SABC, April 14th at 2 p.m.
That's very specific. You're so German.
I know. What I'm saying it? What do you mean?
Like, Zoom, and I will be there at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I will look
by the way,
and everything will be good with the world. Yeah,
I have an announcement to make. Yes. So thank God I've had my coffee. Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
Yeah, so you know, it was a whirlwind, you know, like I was in South Africa. I did the writing sessions, Shikana, Karin Zoid, Tamara Day, Zion. I met RJ Benjamin, who produced In Tandem. And then I involved some of my other artists that I worked with then, Annie Haslam from Renaissance and so forth. And we started writing the songs that ended up on now the Surrender album in South Africa, ironically, because the year after that, I did another BMI writers camp that was organized by Brandon Bakshi and Martin Myers, Music Exchange. And we wrote Love You the Most on the first day, which then was released through Big Management and used to promote a movie, an Amazon movie called Married Young. And that really changed the game for me over here once again. You know, like there'd been so many other instances, but that song really did something here. You know, we got on Top 40 radio for the first time, and then tragically the pandemic hits. This was in 2019 with Love You the Most. And the video, you know, blew up on YouTube, and then we got it on Top 40 radio. And but that was after Gary passed. So the pandemic hits 2020, and in the very beginning, Gary got sick. Everybody in the office got sick.
Yeah.
At Big Management.
Yeah.
You know, I just signed with a year and a half before that. You know, in the fall of 2018. You know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. When I think back at it now, like I think like this all happened. You know, we had to go through all of this. You know?
But I think that's the point, is that because of what happened and how it happened, obviously, as you point out, it actively informed how you considered the creation of Surrender, because you didn't trade on any part of the pandemic. What you did, as you do, and clearly lyrically and melodically with Surrender, everything about this album is ironically upbeat, created at a time when everything was entirely downbeat.
Thank you for saying that. You know, it is a very up album, you know, and a lot of that has to do with Alex Forbes, my co-writer, on 6 out of the 10 songs on the record. And Alex and I met after Love You the Most came out and blew up on YouTube, and we'd already met. She is a part of the Forbes family. Steve is her uncle, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, she's a bit of an outlier in the family, the Forbes family, Forbes magazine, etc.
We like that. We like outliers.
She's a bit of an outlier, and but I met her 20 years ago when I first moved to New York on the Forbes yacht.
As one does.
As one does, yeah. I mean, I had just moved to New York. I knew nobody. I knew nothing. I was so green. I was just out of school. You know, I was completely I had no idea what the hell I was doing. or getting myself into, but I loved New York, you know, and I somehow got into a room with a then CNN correspondent named DeRoy Murdoch, who invited me to several events, and one of them was, hey, you know, what are you doing? Do you want to go for a ride on the Forbes yacht? And I said, Forbes, is that the magazine? Yeah.
Hold on,
Yacht?
I'll check my calendar. Yes.
Yeah, up to West Point to watch a West Point football game.
As one does.
And I said, you know, absolutely, you know, and it was really fun actually, and it was very interesting, and the game was great, and you know, riding up the Hudson River, I mean, it was just beautiful. And that's when I first met Alex Forbes, who had already written several hit songs. You know, she wrote Taylor Dayne's "Don't Rush Me." She's known for that, and she wrote a bunch of hits with Nile Rodgers, and she's done a lot of songs. She's written hundreds of songs, and a lot of them have been placed in films and TV and so forth. And she did well for herself, you know. But very humble, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And then we lost touch completely, and then we reconnected on Facebook.
As one does, yeah. Again, as one does. Facebook.
And then she reached out to me, and she was like, I saw I Love You the Most, you know, I love that song, and wow, you know, like it's got like millions of views on YouTube, amazing, you know. And she was like, should we get together and write sometime? And I was like, absolutely, how have you been? You know, we got caught up, and that was the first time we got together. And I knew who she was, obviously, and we'd met, but we'd really lost touch, and we got together and we started writing. And I think one of the first songs we wrote was Surrender. You know, I want to say that one of the first songs we wrote was Surrender. And I was like, wow, the energy. And we just had a writing session yesterday, right here, over in that
over
room.
there. Okay, very cool.
And you know, we hadn't seen each other because she moved upstate, New York State.
Yeah.
And we'd been doing the writing sessions at her apartment in Manhattan. Okay. And she came here, she was in town, and she was like, let's get together, let's write, you know, we're really due, we haven't written, and we wrote a great song yesterday. It was a really wonderful experience.
Don't tell.
Yeah. So she, you know, we got together and we started writing these songs, and then the pandemic hits, and we were like, what are we going to do? Are we not going to keep writing? And she was like, I already had COVID, you could come over. No joke. And I was like,
give me a hug. Yeah.
You know, and this is Alex. This is Alex, like in a nutshell. She's like fearless. I love her. Yeah. And so we started getting together every other week, and we just would just like pour everything that we were going through on a personal level, on a professional level, I mean, because everything was disastrous.
It was, yeah.
You know, I mean, everything was like, cancel this, cancel that show, cancel this show, cancel that. Fuck, this is not going to happen. Oh, you know, you're going to bleep that out.
But because of that, you guys got together, focused, and co-wrote what has become an album that, like, I go back to the original point, that so much of it at the time that you were writing it, you were cancelled, and yet you were writing these songs that were, you know,
cancel culture was everywhere.
It was real, and yet you managed to realize an album that now makes complete sense, because what you're delivering come the 3rd of March is entirely, it's the fuel that people are desperate to hear. But where you got that energy from at a time when there was no energy to be had is remarkable.
Yeah, look, you know, it was always inspiring, you know. Sugar My, which was one of the singles, which we also pushed to radio here in the US and in South Africa. And it did you know, it did pretty well here. We got onto, I think, up to like number 36 on top 40 media charts in the US, and it was like a hot hit on Jacaranda in South Africa and Johannesburg. Shout out to Jacaranda for Danny Painter, We love you.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you
She's
are
been
much loved. You know, you are much loved. But yeah, I mean, I think just the overall acknowledgement for each single that appears on this album. I mean, I count four. So Surrender is the fourth, effectively.
yes.
Yeah. So there's still six to go because
Well,
each of them, and I said this to Mel earlier today, is that each one of them is a single. And there are a few albums in the world that could claim potentially to have that kind of possibility. How do you feel about that?
I look, I hope so, that's all, every album, every release it's nothing other than if not an offering.
Mm,
That's how I feel about it, right? This is what I do, this is what I love. I'm offering it, and the rest of it is really out of my control. There's only so much that I can do
mm,
to I can go out on the road and promote the album. Like,
mm,
that's my job.
mm,
And I have a great band to do that with,
mm.
we are planning on doing just about every song, every show, as unless it's requested to be a solo acoustic show, which some of the shows are.
Mm,
Um, Specifically, the venue or the promoter requests that.
mm.
But if don't, I'll have a band. I'll have a band with me, and I have a great band. And Marcus Dembinski, who is the producer of the album,
Yep.
co-producer, he produced most of it.
Yeah.
David Schoenwriter is another producer on the album as well, and then I co-produced, all of it.
Mm,
So he's our music director, and he's a great instrumentalist as well.
mm,
So, I'm very lucky. I always dream about this,
mm.
bringing the band that you make the record with, or people that you work on the record with, onto the road is like the best kind of situation.
So is Alicia coming on the road as well?
Alicia, no. Alicia is not Alicia is not a road person.
She doesn't do
Not
the road.
everybody. Yeah, no, I love Alicia. She's one of my best friends. But Alicia is not a road person. It's not for
No,
everybody. The road is not
no,
for everybody,
I don't.
as you know,
No,
Jason.
I say that in jest, but obviously her contribution on Surrender is fundamental. And whether you're talking about the Spanish version, whether you're which is on the latter part of the record, but just her contribution through collaboration. I get a sense that this album, you invited your best friends to come and play with you, and they did, and
Yeah.
magic happened.
It that's a good way to put it. I want to be surrounded by people I trust, and people that are talented, and people that are good communicators.
Mm.
And that is something that can be difficult
Mm.
in the world in general, but in the music business, in the industry, it can be very difficult. Some
Yeah.
people just, they want to do their own thing, and they don't want to talk to you for whatever reason, and that's okay.
Mm.
So you
Yeah.
go, right, it's another form of surrendering. You go, if it's not going to be you, it's going to be
It'll
someone
be
else.
someone else. That's it.
Move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And yes, I did. Marcus and Alicia, David Schoenwetter, Max, who I only just met, who played bass. Oh my God, who I mean, like, now I have to look at the. That really is the core. Cyril Putzer, who is the engineer at Studio G in Brooklyn. Alex Vishnu, who did all the videos, we're working on another music video with him. And Maury Levovitz, who runs Honey Rose Records, who is releasing the album. My South African peeps, Melissa Conradi, yourself. I mean, there are so many people that have a hand in it, but the core group of musicians, and Marcus played all the drums as well, by the way.
Like what?
I mean, so it's acoustic electric guitar is split between him and I.
Okay.
Acoustic is all me, vocals, He did drums. Max played bass. Marcus programmed a lot of the keyboard stuff. We played some of the keyboard stuff ourselves, you know, some of it him, some of it myself. And then we had the guests, you know, like Alicia, and so we had a lyra player who is a Greek musician named Dimitris Menoxopoulos.
Yep, very good.
Who we found online.
You see,
and
thank goodness, weirdly, ironically, for a pandemic, because if there hadn't been, I mean, this is kind of my point that I'm getting to, is that if the pandemic hadn't happened, this record would have been very different, right?
We would have, let's see if I can get a little bit more light in here. There we go. Okay. Oh, there we go. That's a little bit more.
That's good. No, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, if that, we wouldn't have had to think outside the box, and we had to, you know, we really had to think outside the box, you know, and how do we do this given the circumstances?
Yeah.
And the beginning really was Marcus and I getting together at his home studio or my home studio and sitting here and going, okay, let's program, let's arrange the song fully and see what we can do with that. Let's see how that sounds. You know, with David and I, like David Schoenwetter and I worked that way in the beginning as well. And then we started adding the live instruments as we could. So when we were able to go back into the studio, we booked into Studio G and we started adding live instruments to just about everything.
Yeah.
And you know, it was we got to basically make the record twice.
Yeah, no thanks to things beyond your control. Yeah, which again, it kind of talks to that, like you say, you had to stretch muscles that you hadn't considered you would need to stretch because you had worked in a particular way for 6 albums, and it had worked beautifully and everything was good. And then all of a sudden, you know, you had to reimagine, you know, the unknown, and then still have it make sense to, you know, the audience that loved the work that you had produced to that point. So ultimately, what Surrender has delivered is probably your fittest album in the sense that you had to really reach very, very deeply on so many levels to deliver the quality and the energy that these songs celebrate.
Yeah, look, you know, I think the exercise of reaching, of what you're talking about, is really important if you want to be a writer. And you have to go deep, you know, and I work with talent, you know, I started producing myself and I coach, I work with singers, I coach voice, and I tell them the same thing. Yeah, I said, you have to go deeper. You know, if you want to get there, if you want to get somewhere, you have to go deeper. And when I was told that first about 10 years ago or so, when I made the Mosaic album in New Jersey with David Bendeth.
Yeah.
James Frazee. David Bendeth famously, you know, Paramore and Breaking Benjamin, and he remixed all the Elvis number ones, like that was his.
Yep, that was his thing. Yeah.
You know, so David Bendeth, you know, monster producer, and he would tell me this when we were working together on Mosaic. You know, he said, you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper. This is not enough. I need more. I need more. I
don't have any more. But now you understand what that means, right?
It means I have to be more vulnerable. You know, I have to show more of my fear and my feelings and my emotions and my struggles.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do.
Yeah, that's the deal. That's the contract.
It hurts.
Yes, but that's the point. And to his point, to what he was saying is that the second that happens, in the same way that the pandemic hit and you were completely disarmed, you had to get on with it because you didn't have the luxury. And I remember speaking to Josh Groban about this literally in November of 2020. Where
who about this?
Sorry?
Who did you speak to about this?
Josh Groban.
The singer?
Yes, yeah. and he was saying to me that, yeah, you kind of have to, you've got to literally divorce everything that you had before,
Yeah.
because you are now alone. So this is literally like you standing up on an audition night for the first time. You, and yet you have this legacy, but in that moment, everything's been stripped away. So if anything truly credible is going to come, surrender is the result of that. So because you literally had your hands cut off, your legs cut off, everything was cut off, but yet you persevered. And I think surrender is probably the most important statement in your career to date, that says, I've dug deep enough to deliver the talent that is within me. And I think, you know, that's something to affirm.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's what I hope people will get out of it. And I hope they just enjoy it and listen to it and put some nice headphones on, some nice ones.
Yeah.
Because sonically, it's a big thing for me. I want my records to sound really, really good.
And they do. This one in
I feel
particular.
like I get a little bit better at it every time.
Yeah.
I want to get better. I want to learn. I want to grow. I mean, I think Marcus did a tremendous job. Marcus Dubinsky. I mean, this guy is so talented. And he's young and he's new. This is one of the first albums that he's produced as an album. And
Oh, really?
yeah, he's from Massachusetts. He's from Boston, and he lives here in Manhattan. And I think he even just texted, and we have a call going on, like, after this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, he's so talented, this kid, and I'm so lucky that he came along and created this sonically. We really started. I took some risks that I haven't had in the past. I tried some new things, and on a couple of the songs, and I wanted to do it, and he's like, what about if we do this? You feel comfortable with doing something like this? This is a little bit out of your may feel like it's a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but like, what do you think? And he would give these ideas, and I would say, I think it's great. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. And we tried a lot of stuff. We had time to try stuff.
Yeah.
It was just him and I.
How
And
much time do you
I
need
love
to have all the
working like
time?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
one thing, is I work well like that. It's in some ways it was actually easier to make a record like this because it wasn't 20 people in a room.
Yeah.
Which with in tandem we had, I mean, we always had like a half a dozen at least, or a dozen more, or more people in the room. Yeah. Working on the record, and that was that record, making that almost killed me.
Yeah, like, because it's weirdly distracting. Whereas what you had through the process of creating Surrender was that you had this weird kind of quiet to focus on creating these songs and then working with these people for the most part initially remotely, and then kind of creating a relationship digitally, and then being able to connect with them ultimately, emotionally and physically. Never again in the history of the world, I hope that will ever be the case. Yeah, I know. Sorry, that's me. Yeah, I'm on the cheap version.
I like it. Jason is an optimist. That's good.
No, I just think that I don't think that you'll ever create an album like this again, nor should you. Which is exciting in so many ways, because I think your approach moving forward, you're going to take so much of the journey more recently that you've traveled, and you're going to apply that to the work that you do in the future.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, just talking to you about it now is revealing to me, because it was really, it really was tough.
Yeah.
These last couple of years,
Yeah.
It really was. And a lot happened that was difficult and painful, complicated, there were a lot of challenges, and but we got through it somehow.
But what
Somehow
you
we
did, that I applaud is that you reimagined, reinvented multiple times, and you tapped into every available platform for inspiration and motivation. Um, whether that was, making sound or whatever it was, you did not, you literally flipped the bird to the reality and said, okay, we've all been fed this. I'm not gonna fall over. The videos of you walking through Central Park or wherever it was that you were walking, and being this kind of you had nothing musically to say, but you did have something to say, and you took your audience with you through what everyone was going through. But it was always positive. It was always, whether you were probably crying inside at the time, but you did.
not just inside.
But how glorious, and I think, probably you don't even realize it, but it you hear it in the songs, is that you kind of just you beat against it, and you were going, no, there is a way out, and we can prevail, because human nature is such that the good will out. You had it in you, and you had to dig deep, probably deeper than you ever thought you needed to, at a time of your career, 6 albums in, that you shouldn't have needed to have dug necessarily that deep, but yet you did. And you kind of went right back to the core of what got you started. And you delivered it in a way that has all of the sophistication, all of the relationship, all of that. And you've delivered an album that could go anywhere from Americana to pop rock to, in some cases, rock. There's just so much potential in this record.
Thank you. Yeah. You mentioned making sound. Was that intentional?
Well, I watched it. I'm a fan.
Thank you. Yeah. So
82
yeah.
episodes and counting, I believe, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was another thing. I started a podcast called Making Sound, and yes, it's still going. I'm not one of those people that started a podcast during the pandemic and then ended it.
You had a break over Christmas. Let's just put that out there.
I do take breaks, and I don't do quite as many episodes, but I love doing it, and I get to talk to super interesting people.
Yeah. Who inspire you?
Inspire me, I had Legan Breda, who's the drummer on Tandem on, who is the house drummer at the Idols South Africa.
Yes.
Love that guy. I just love that guy. And he was so much fun to talk to, and he's such a force of life, man,
Yeah. Drummers. Gotta love drummers.
Yeah, drummers are the best. And they're all characters, and they're usually a good time,
Yeah.
They're good. So I have a new drummer I work with here, Pedro Mila, who's Brazilian.
The best drummers in the world. Oh my word.
He is. When I saw him play, I was like, I have to get that guy.
Yeah,
His
they
time.
have rhythm. They have rhythm. Yeah. That and the Argentinians. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
His time was just so on. Yeah. So I started working with a new drummer, but yeah, look, it was I think we made the best of it, and hopefully we can keep doing that. Hopefully we can play a lot of shows all over. I'm excited to come to South Africa to play again. I just finally started playing in Germany again. We had a show there over the holidays in December. It was packed, and we just announced it a day before. It was wonderful, and we have some great shows coming up stateside for the album release shows in New York, May 7th, Connecticut, May 4th, Pennsylvania, May 25th, Ohio. There'll be other ones, April 28th, that's the Ohio show. And then we have the South African events and shows that we're doing, which are going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure. Cape Town, Durban, Splashy Fen, Pretoria, Johannesburg. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Brazil, I'm going to tour in Brazil for the first time this year.
Wow.
later on this year. Yeah, I've just started working with a new promoter there, so we're working on setting that up. Germany will be there in June, at the end of June, I think. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of back to, back to life,
Are
back
you,
to reality.
yeah, there's a song in there. There's a song in there. But are you excited? Because I mean, of course you are, but it's kind of daunting in a way because we've all had an excuse for the longest time, and now all of a sudden there is no more an excuse. But yet you've got this extraordinary body of work that if I were you, I mean, these songs on Surrender Live are just going to do extraordinary things. I mean, if I were you, you must be so excited at how they're going to realize themselves in a live space.
I am. And we just did a show here in New York. It was a private event, but we filmed it and recorded it. And it was the first time I played with the new band. And it was great. It was I missed the adrenaline, I'm sort of an adrenaline junkie, I'm a runner, and I love that energy on stage. And then when you walk off, you're just like so high from the performance. And so, but yeah, look, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy life. You have to spend a lot of times on planes, which isn't always fun.
No.
But that's the perfect birth control.
That's the contract. That's the contract. It's like, well, you want it. That's the contract. Yeah.
So that's the other side. I always say, yeah, if you're thinking about having children, fly on planes a few times first.
Don't do it. Yes, that will kill it for you. But
so,
what is the most exciting part for you, just in closing, just with obviously it's an exciting time to be Jann Klose at this point, because you've got a brand new album dropping on March 3rd. You've got a tour that's going to extend through the better part of the year. But what are you hoping this chapter is going to bring for you?
Well, I'm sure it'll be another big learning experience, because it always is, because there's always challenges on the road, and you have to face them and you have to deal with it. So that is, hopefully I'm going to be better at dealing with those, because they're always there. I'm looking forward to meeting new people. I love meeting new people, and
you always have. Yeah, you always have.
And friendships and connections, and that is exciting to me to look forward to, because you just don't know who and what and
who's going to be in the room. Yeah, who's going to be in the room.
And I like that that's the adventure of it, plus the traveling and seeing places that I love to see.
Exactly. So you are truly surrendering in the
I'm trying, man.
Every sense of the word.
Every day. I'm trying.